Record numbers of Americans are quitting their jobs. Businesses can't find employees. Employees don't want to come because of COVID-19 concerns, child care issues, or the pay's too low. Well, Iowans working with migrants are hoping to find better futures for them and fill some of these positions.
I strongly believe that America can do better with those immigrants if you give them the path, the legal path, to come and work. We need them, as they need to leave, because put yourself in their shoes. They're parents, they're grandmothers, they're son of somebody, and somebody's killing them because those government don't forgive. It's not just the gangs, it's the government itself.
So Jody, what has to happen? What do you want to see happening right now? So this Republican gathering here of governors, that focus was on border security, extending walls or fences, structures. It was primarily keeping people out and getting control of the border, right? No more people coming across without legal authorization. What should be happening down there?
Well, I mean, immigration and immigration-related issues are so multifaceted. But, I mean, first of all, we have to change the way that we're talking about this, right? So people who seek asylum in our country are not unlawful. As we've just discussed, it is not illegal or unlawful under our own federal immigration law or under international law to seek asylum in another country. So at the very least, we have to change the words we're using to talk about this. Second, if we're talking specifically about asylum.
Before you go, so what words do you use?
For people who arrive at the border, I would say people who are arriving at our border who are seeking safety, seeking asylum, seeking safety or seeking refuge from economic conditions, from natural disasters. In terms of asylum, our asylum law has to change. It is so difficult to actually obtain asylum in our country that something has to change there. It's very, very difficult to obtain asylum in the United States. And if you do in fact win your asylum case, then eventually you can apply for your permanent residency, more commonly known as a green card. And that's how you get that path to being able to stay here permanently.
This is a multi-year process.
Multi-year process. Eventually, if you become a permanent resident, if you have a green card, eventually after several years you can apply for citizenship, but that's very misunderstood. You don't ever hear that piece of it being talked about. And again, changing the narrative, changing our laws and changing the narrative. I think to say that like we don't have the capacity to handle this number of people, I think that's gaslighting. If you look at the state of Iowa, we don't even have enough workers to fill our jobs right now. We literally survive as a state, and I think this country survives and thrives because of the contributions of immigrants. And so at a state level, we can either bury our head in the sand and say, no, we don't want this, which I think is very xenophobic and nothing else, or we can acknowledge that we want our communities to be thriving and we can figure out, oh, this might be how we're able to do it. But the flip side of that is, unless we're gonna start acknowledging as well those factors that are causing people to come, nothing is going to change. There are going to continue to be natural disasters. People are going to continue to flee awful, awful economic conditions and find ways to survive. And we can't just keep burying our heads in the sand and acting like that's not the case.
So the way it is set up here, I believe some of the Republicans are asking for this, I don't know what the right word is, but the temporary place you wait, rather than have that in the United States, they want that to happen on the Mexican side of the border, where you have to wait there as you await your proceedings to get into the country.
Why?
Immigrant has been killed in that waiting.
People have been, yes, kidnapped, they've been raped, they don't have access to proper sanitation or food. If people are seeking protection in the United States, why are we causing them to remain in squalid conditions? I've been to the border myself. I've offered legal orientation to people who were gathered with babies at a port of entry and slept there every night until a Customs and Border Patrol officer would attend to them, basically. I don't think if anybody witnesses that with their own eyes, they're going to say that that's acceptable or appropriate. It makes it harder for people to access legal representation in the United States. How are you supposed to access appropriate legal representation if you're stuck in squalid conditions on the Mexico side of the border? It's absurd.
Rachel, when you hear people, when they're talking about this entire conversation, and they say they are concerned that people are bringing drugs over, they're part of gangs, they're coming across to either smuggle people across or to do bad things in this country, what do you think?
I think it's politics. I think there is nothing humane there. Put yourself in their shoes. We had experience on September 11, which is horrible. I freaked out because I ran from a war, something similar, and it happened here. So think about those people. If they have to keep running in New York, would you feel that those people have a time even to come to bring drugs to Canada? If that happened and we was on the war, will you have a chance to get drug and run with it to come to United States? That's completely is untrue. I'm afraid it's just a politic. It's just being blind that you don't consider somebody who doesn't look like you as a human. That's it. But you have to justify yourself because it's not true.
When you see so much focus on the security part of this, not the humanity part of this, in your mind, what changes the focus to be on what you think should be that priority of the people themselves and their future?
Like how do we change that focus, or is that the question? Mm-hmm. Or, I mean, I don't really know at this point. After doing this work for several years, I don't actually know how you get people to care. You just asked a question about the security, and I would agree. I think that's political posturing. We know the reality of people that we work with every day, and that is not what's happening. I actually don't know how you get people to care about other humans and care about people who actually in our state, in Iowa, who are here, who can contribute to the overall growth of our state, of our communities, keep them vibrant, keep them thriving. I don't know at this point, actually. I don't know what you do to get people to care about other human beings who are seeking safety and seeking refuge in our state.
I've been living hope, and up to today, I speak 7 languages, and I always think that it's a hope. There will be a way. But if those leaders can come and talk to us as the first people who, like we have asylee, we have a lot of, I don't do asylum, I do green card, work permit for an asylee. So if they come to us and ask us, because we meet with them daily basic, they will know the truth. So that's my hope, that if you have that idea, you think they're coming here with drugs, come talk to me, talk to her, talk to those lawyers who deal with those human beings, and you will know they're excellent human beings.
I should mention Rachel also now works with that organization. Up next, the out-of-towner who went to a Trump rally and returned home with the unexpected.